You are listening to the Music Ed Mentor Podcast. This is episode 41, and I am your host, Elisa Jansen-Jones. You can discover my music ed blog at professionalmusiceducator.com or find me on Facebook. At the time I'm recording this here in Western Colorado, we're about halfway through the third quarter of the school year. There's a ton of stuff happening for a K-8 teacher like me. Solo and ensemble is this coming weekend. I'm spending one night a week rehearsing my 10 honor choir kiddos. I'm teaching lessons almost all of the other days. I'm starting to plan our year-end concerts, even as I'm rehearsing our middle school band for their very first band festival. I'm also making music and dress decisions for my community band, producing this podcast, and still trying to juggle all my wife and mom stuff, which I love all of it. Meanwhile, next year is already looming. I know you know what I mean. Pretty soon, your principal is going to ask when you want to have concerts next year, and you'll be hitting the reset button again. Unless you're not. Perhaps in your neck of the woods, it's a little less busy and you're thinking, maybe you'd like to start something new. Maybe you'd like to change to a bigger challenge or a different job, or maybe a school district that you're familiar with decided that it's finally time to start teaching elementary music instead of just getting kids started in band, orchestra, or choir in middle school. Maybe you're just looking for a first job and want to get a plan outlined before you jump in. Or maybe you are continuing next year. Whatever your situation is, today's episode is going to help you out. Today, I've brought on my friend and elementary music guru, Jessica Peresta. You can discover her blog and online community at thedomesticmusician.com. Before she was a wildly successful entrepreneur, she got to have the experience of building an elementary music program right from scratch. This actually does happen often, that a district will add a new elementary program, not necessarily offering a whole lot of guidance along the path, and they'll look to hire someone like you to build the thing from scratch. Where do you start? Whether it's a brand new thing that's never happened before, or you're taking over a struggling program, or maybe you're just looking for some new ideas to streamline your own teaching, we've got some tricks up our sleeve in store for you this episode. We're going to talk about resources you can find when you have exactly zero budget, how to manage scheduling, what are the exact steps you need to take to save time and effort on your part so you don't waste your precious time reinventing the metaphorical wheel, and so much more. But first, this episode is brought to you by Smart Music, of course. This year, Smart Music was awarded the School Band and Orchestra magazine's Best Tools for Schools Award at the NAMM show in Anaheim, California. Smart Music impressed the judges with the range of tools that help streamline the work of teachers while simultaneously encouraging students to practice, and at an extraordinarily affordable price. Check for yourselves why this award is so well deserved by going to smartmusic.com and starting your own teacher account today. Now, let's discover what it takes to get an elementary music program up and running.
I'm Jessica Peresta, and I'm the founder of thedomesticmusician.com. And my website helps elementary music teachers, mainly new elementary music teachers who are just starting out, or you have taught secondary music and you're in the elementary music classroom for the first time, or even if you've just taught private lessons and you're just now in the music classroom, it's a whole new world, as you know, what Little Mermaid says. But my heart and passion is for real, just to help elementary music teachers just to get started and give you resources and help you with things that worked for me, and to just share that with you. So that's it in a nutshell, pretty much.
All right, let's hop into our subject matter then. So we're talking about, now I want to say, like, this episode is kind of ideal for people who maybe are at a school and they want to add some kind of elementary program, or if they're in a district and their district wants to add an elementary program, or maybe they're just stepping into a school situation where the program has kind of gone defunct, or maybe they, like you said earlier in our chat, they are secondary teachers and just going into elementary. So whether it's an existing program you're going to try and have to build back to something robust, or you're completely starting from scratch. Does that sound pretty good for our target
definitely.
audience? Because I stepped into a struggling program where the current teacher had been there a long time and her health was failing. And so there was no classroom management. There were no resources. They didn't want to put resources in it because they didn't know where it was going. I didn't have a classroom. All I had was a cart. And I had to go after those resources. And then your experience was starting a whole brand new thing. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes. So this was actually my very first teaching position. I graduated college in December. I did 4.5-year degree. And then, so I was like, I'm just going to substitute teach and then get a teaching job the following fall. Well, lo and behold, one position opened, and it was an elementary music teaching position. And I always said I wanted to teach secondary. And, but I actually always said, and people thought I was crazy when I said this, but I said, I want to teach low income kids. And I seriously said this, I want to help start a program from scratch. And people were like, why would you want to do that to yourself? And I was like, I just do. That's my passion. I mean, when you're passionate about something, well, anyways, so the only job that opened up was in a low income school, and they only had art and PE. There was no music, and there hadn't been a music program for 7 years. I don't understand how there was only art, how there was one or the other. I think before art, it had just been music and no art. And so they decided, well, let's switch to art. And then they decided, let's switch back to music. I don't know. But so same thing. I could hear, as they gave me 2 weeks to set up my classroom, I could hear the students, whatever class that was, when I was setting up next to me, the art room, loud, throwing things, out of control. I was just like, I'm going to turn around and just kind of walk out the building at this point. But no, I came up with a classroom management plan. Things, of course, were not perfect, but that was, when I say I had no resources, there was no instruments. I had one broken. It was either a hand drum or a tambourine. Music textbooks from 10 years old or whatever, but there was nothing else.
Mine are like 40 years old.
Well, and going through the cabinets, there was like more and more. I kept finding more old textbooks. It was like every textbook that had been there since the school building was built, which I used all of them, and we'll get into that. But yeah, it was not like a step in, a teacher's been there a while and left you a bunch of resources to use. It was, all right, let's figure this out. Here we go. And that's how it started.
And that's how most jobs are going to start, right?
Mm-hmm.
I rarely hear, and maybe it's, I don't know, how often do you hear about somebody just stepping into a super established program that's ideal for them? It just doesn't happen, because even if you step into something with 1,000 resources, you're still going to want to make it your own. Right?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. And I've actually thought about that too. I feel like sometimes the music teachers that step into a role where there has already been an established program, sometimes it may be a little bit harder because you're getting compared and you're getting the students. I actually have just recently talked to a music teacher about this because she's struggling with that bit about, they're comparing me. They're saying, well, Mrs. Whoever did it this way, or why don't you do this? Or we miss her. I just can't imagine how frustrating that would be, to gain the students' trust and to let them know it's okay if things are a little bit different,
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
So tell us about the first steps that you had to take to get this thing started in only 2 weeks before you took over.
Okay, so I'm trying to think back. I don't think I was even given a budget to go buy anything. So I just used, graduation money. I was like, all right, well, because that's what teachers do. You're like, I have money. It goes to my classroom. And I went to one of the local, there wasn't teacher pay teacher back then. So I went to one of the local teacher stores, and they're very limited, and they're, the music teacher section's like 2 things pretty much. But I just went and bought some colorful things to hang up around my classroom, the ones that talk about tempo dynamics, note names, and all that. And then I thought, because every student, I thought they're going to all be starting from foundation. It's just, we're going to mainly work on this rest of the school year, just the basics. I can't teach the standards the way I want to because, I got to just get them to learn a little bit of music. So that was the first step, is to get a little bit of color in that classroom on my walls, and then some motivational posters even. And then, since I didn't have any resources, I didn't really have to worry about arranging my classroom so much. That came later on, but I did have risers. They were a little bit broken. The middle part did not really latch well. I think they had been rolled back and forth to the gym, back to my classroom so many times, but I decided to just, I didn't like that, but that's all I had. I was going to have the students just sit on those. But yeah, besides the physical things, I knew I needed to come up with a good classroom management strategy, and I needed to have some good lessons ready to go, even simple, but make them interesting for the students I was teaching. And like I said, I didn't really have a curriculum. So I just kind of was like, I took all those old textbooks, those 2 weeks, went through, found songs I pulled from, thought about, what I just learned in college and my student teaching experiences, and just pulled a bunch of songs and kind of made lists and typed up kind of like my own curriculum map, I guess you could say, and just started. And I was like, this may be a train wreck, but we're just going to jump right in together. But classroom management was my very first main thing, was just, this is what you need to expect in here. This is what I expect. And this is what's going to happen if, things fall apart.
Well, you say that classroom management was, but I'm going to rewind you a little bit when you said that you decided that they just had to learn music, like you were just going to teach the basics. And I think that was a fabulous move for you, because too often we step into something new and we have these grandiose dreams, and we feel like we have to cover everything. Like we jump into every let's tick every box in the curriculum, right?
Yeah.
Like print out all the curriculum and go, okay, now every grade has to have their own lesson, and we're going to do these fabulous performances and everything's going to be perfect. But the first thing you actually did was you lowered your expectations to the low-hanging fruit. And I think that is an exceptionally important step.
Oh, definitely. I completely agree with that. Which makes it a little hard because, the older kids, you don't want to have them use the phrase, which they will anyways, but I'm bored, or this is boring. But I think taking, even, like you said, a simple song that you would normally just use with your lower grades, and then just extending it a little even, we're going to sing this, but you guys can do some movement to it. And, I don't have any instruments, but we're going to do some body percussion to this activity to make it a little bit, even if they don't even know they're learning syncopation, you're kind of having them feel it with their bodies or with body percussion. Just for them to experience music first of all, and then they can start learning what they're experiencing as they go. But yeah, bringing it down, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Like you said, you don't need to stress out about, got to cover all the things, all the songs, all the lessons, no. If you're just starting out from a program from scratch, just take it day by day and make it your own, and, simplify it as you need to.
Yeah. And I always started too with a lesson plan that was just 3 parts: beginning, middle, and end. Some way to get them focused and engaged, some educational piece, and then a way to bring them back to center to send them back to their class. Did you have something structured kind of like that too?
Oh yeah. So the kids I taught, it was not just low income school. I taught in a pretty inner city school. And so my students love to move. I realized that very quickly, which a lot of, most kids do, right? But I knew I could just tell, like they just had rhythm. They needed to move around. So I was like, okay. So I found it was a workshop I had attended, and I came up with this body percussion warm up that after I taught it to the kids, they just knew that's what they came in, and that was the warm up we did. We did this body percussion warm up every single time. And so there was always some kind of warm up intro, reviewing what we learned the time before. And then, like you said, we got into the content. That was the middle part, whether it was singing, moving, instruments when I ended up getting those, or rhythm writing, whatever it was. And then we would always end the lesson by closing out the lesson with some kind of, even if it was a book, maybe another body percussion activity, a dance, some kind of something to wrap it up as well. But yeah, I think 3 simple steps. You're right. Intro, middle, closing out the lesson. I think keeping it simple is, where it's at.
Okay, so then tell us about your classroom management plan.
Okay. So it was kind of like the best advice I can give for classroom management, especially in a school like mine where there hadn't been music for a while, it's kind of trial and error. So I say this a lot. If you try something and it's not working, give it time. Don't just say, well, it didn't work the first time I tried it, but try something and then, okay, this didn't work for a couple weeks. I've seen this class 2 or 3 times now. Let's move on to something else. But honestly, going back to the simpler is better, one of the best things that worked for me, honestly, was sticker charts. And I don't know why stickers, even with the older grades, they're just, it's a visual thing, I think. And the simplest thing I did, and this is something I just kind of came up with one day. I was like, I'm going to laminate teacher names and we're going to put them on the wall. And I color coded it by grade level. And then the classes, they had to earn stickers their time in music. They could earn up to 3 stickers, and then they could earn it into the 9 weeks reward, which was usually you can bring in, we did like CDs, school appropriate, freeze dance, or some kind of activity, maybe not the full class period, but half that class period, or even just one song or something like that. But I even said it's not even, you're not competing against other classes, because I realize you're always going to have those classes where some of them can only earn up to like, let's be real, 1 sticker, and that's like good for that class. And then you're going to have those classes that come in that can earn 3 every time. So I always told them it's just a competition with your class. You're just competing against yourself. Like, how much better can you do in here than you did the time before? But sticker charts work so great, but also, like just forming a relationship with the students, which is hard for a music teacher because you see every kid in the school. I was lucky enough to work in a small school. I only had 2 classes per grade level. So I know that's a good thing, because I know it's harder for the teachers that have, and are in a big school. But for me, I could tell, first of all, they needed to trust me. They did not know who I was. They were used to music and art teachers being in and out, and I needed them to know, I'm here, I'm staying, you can trust me. So getting to know them, getting to know these students, and even the ones who were reviewed as behavior problems, I didn't want to prejudge anyone. I didn't, the teachers would tell me, oh, watch out for Johnny. And I was like, you want to be aware, but at the same time, I'm like, I'm going to let Johnny come in and, do what he does in my room. And just forming a relationship with the students, I didn't have a lot of the behavior issues I noticed a lot of the other teachers had. And they'd be like, how are you doing that? How are you not having a problem with this kid? And I was like, I just talked to him. I gave him time, which is hard to do because you're, 40 minutes, 45 minutes of class time. But it can even be as simple as a hi, how are you today? Or standing at the door and greeting the students, or when you're ending the lesson, hey, I have 5 minutes left. Who wants to tell me what you ate for dinner last night? Even simple strategies like that, sometimes just being heard. These students, they just need sometimes to feel like they're heard and loved, And so those were 2 things I did that worked really well.
Awesome. Going back to the lesson plan thing too, not to, sidetrack from classroom management or behavior or whatever, but one thing that helped me a lot was remembering that children don't mind repetition as much as we do.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so I was thinking today about a song that I did with my classes yesterday and today. And it was okay because, I see them every other day or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was thinking, am I going to pull that out again? And I think I will, because we get bored. They don't,
Yeah.
like they have watched that last Disney movie 5,000 times and are
Oh,
still not
yeah.
sick of it,
Yeah.
And yet you put it on for one of us grown-ups, we're like, oh, please don't,
Mm-hmm.
So just having that, did you use a lot of repetition as well? And here's my other question too, while we're talking about it. Did you clump your classes together? So did you teach like the same thing to kindergarten and first, or kindergarten first and second? Or did you have a separate lesson plan for every grade? Okay, go.
Yeah. Yeah. So the last question you asked, I did clump. And it was easier because, like I said, I was at a small school, but I did a lot of the same with kinder first, second and third, and then fourth and fifth. And I actually did my programs that way too. But so what I would do with like kindergarten, I would just add a little bit more with first grade. Even if it was the same song, we would just extend it just a little bit. And then second grade, same thing with third. I would extend it just a little bit. But yeah, I feel like you said, repetition, a lot of times that is so much fun because let's say, I don't know why this is on my brain, but a folk dance, for instance, right? So if you teach it once, why not keep repeating it? Because what the cool part about that is when you teach it the first time, you're mainly just teaching it. They're learning it slowly, step by step, but then like, let's say a month down the road, you say, hey, we're going to do Alabama Gala today. And then the kids are like, oh, I remember that. And so you just jump right in and you can do it. And that's the same with teaching a song. The first time you teach anything, you're going to feel like sometimes oh my gosh, this is so redundant and the kids aren't learning it and it's taking forever. But then when you go back into it the next time and then the next time and the next time, you can, work more on like a lot more things like, okay, are we singing in our head voice? Okay, you know what? You learned that song so well. I bet we can sing in and around now. Oh my goodness, you guys sounded so great on that. Who would like to walk to a drum and play the steady beat while we sing? You always can add things onto the song. And so the kids, a lot of times too, you'll notice, will ask, hey, remember that song we sang? Can we sing that again? And you're like, oh, it wasn't in my lesson plan, but okay, sure. Yeah, but I think keeping it simple is key. It is definitely key. And repeating songs or any activity in the music room, I feel like the kids are learning music anyways, and you're not having to keep throwing new things at them. You can keep repeating the things you've already taught, and then you can add to those lessons.
Yeah,
if
that's
that makes
awesome.
sense. Yeah.
I always would, when I would finish teaching them a song, I'd write the song name on like a craft stick and then stick it
Oh,
in a little
yeah.
plastic cup for that grade. So then
That's a
if
good
I
idea.
ended up with like some time at the beginning of class or at the end of class, or if I wanted to do a review of a song, I just pull out that cup and let somebody pick a song, and then we do that song, and then we're into class. And then for classroom management, you did sticker charts. I went to my local coffee shop and got a bunch of those clear plastic cups, like that they put smoothies in or whatever. And then I bought those little fuzzy pom-poms. So they could earn 5 pom-poms per class, right? And I did that consistently for 2 years. They loved it, of course, because when their cup was finally full, then they got a prize,
Yeah.
And I did that, and I would do individual stickers, and I would hand out suckers, and I just did all of these things to reward. And then I recorded a podcast with the classroom management guru, right? And he
Oh,
was like,
gosh.
you need to just be done with external rewards. And I was like, what?
Oh, no.
But I think if that's what works and will help establish that rapport, then why not,
Oh, yeah.
So I finished out that school year. It was Michael Linson, by the way, if you've ever read his
Oh, yeah.
classroom management books. He's just great. And his emails once a week are awesome too. Anyway, so I decided to take him up on it and just not do external rewards. And instead I do little winks if they're being good, or little smiles or high fives or knuckles, or,
Yeah.
things like that. And they actually focus more and pay attention more, and they care more.
Yeah.
And they even, like my younger classes in their classroom, they do like clip up, clip down, right?
Uh-huh.
And they keep
Yeah.
asking me like, "Can you tell us if we can clip up? Can you tell us if we can clip down?" I'm like, "I can tell you, but why would I?" Right?
Yeah.
Because then
Right.
that's just one more step. That's an external reward in an external classroom. It's the same
Right.
reason why I'm not going to take a kid to the principal's office for being disrespectful in my class, unless it's
Mm-hmm.
something extreme, of course,
Mm-hmm.
then there are principal times. But
Oh yeah.
just for regular things, I don't do it anymore. It's taken me a few years to get to this point.
Yeah.
And at the first of
Yeah.
this year, kids were like, "Can we have suckers? Can we have suckers?" I'm like, "Nope, but you can have a high five. Like,
Yeah.
you had a great time in music today. Wasn't that enough?" And
Yeah.
it's totally enough, at
Yes.
least
Oh yeah.
in the situation I'm in, but it's been a few years
Yeah.
now.
Oh yeah. I think it does take a few years to get, used to it and the kids to get used to it.
Hmm.
But I just wanted to add one more thing about classroom management if I can. Um, I forgot to say this part. When you're just starting out, you don't want to be mean, but you want to be a little more firm at the beginning. And then as the year goes on, you can loosen up because, they learn your expectations and you can kind of like, okay, you don't need to practice procedures as much and you can kind of like loosen up a bit. But I had someone give me that advice and I was like, why? I don't want to be mean. But it really did
Uh,
help. Like,
you just
you
need
know,
to be strict and
yes.
consistent and
Yes.
firm. Like, I get that with me, consistency is like my number one issue in my life. Like,
Mm-hmm.
if you would ask me the one thing I could fix about myself, I know, and like people like you who know me sort of well,
Yeah.
you're like, really? I wouldn't expect that of you. No, I'm totally. Anyway, but yeah, being consistent with your
Mm-hmm.
classroom management plan and not letting them get away with stuff
Oh
is
yeah.
what you're talking about. But yeah, being really strict to the
Mm-hmm.
rules.
Mm-hmm.
And it works.
Yeah, it does. And sometimes it's out of your comfort zone, but it's
Cool.
necessary.
All right, so we've collected our resources. We have decided on what we're going to teach. We have a very simple lesson plan. We've minimized our need for planning a bunch because we've clumped things together. We've got our classroom management plan, maybe a reward system, and we're ready to go. What's the next step to building it?
Okay, so like I said, I did not have instruments. And now let me say, instruments are not like I feel like they're just so much more, what am I trying to say?
Hassle?
Um, yeah. And I feel like, okay, so I feel like a lot of teachers, maybe because a lot of music teachers already just have them in their classroom. And so, of course, if you have them there, of course, use them. But I knew I wasn't going to let that stop me and be frustrated, like, oh, woe is me. Because first of all, don't fall into the comparison trap. I did that and it was a bad move on my part because looking at music teachers in my district, even the schools down the street who had like 10 xylophones and, like 5 drums and 45 pairs of rhythm sticks. And I'm sitting here like, I can't compare to that, but don't. I mean, you cannot fall into that because you be you, focus on building your classroom up. And I guarantee you, they did not start with that. They built their program up. So, building your program up, if you are in a situation like I was in where you do not have instruments, have the kids use body percussion at first. Just get them moving and explaining. And if you're not aware, what body percussion is basically just stomping, patting, clapping, and snapping. And
That's me
yeah,
snapping.
just yes. And they can make rhythms and steady beat and all kinds of stuff by just using their bodies. The next step up is you can just I know a lot of the hardware stores even just give buckets if you just ask, do you have any extra buckets? The buckets you mix paint in, bucket drums. And that's a huge thing now too, which is really cool. And so the students and I would even just explore sounds in our classroom. We would even, find sticks outside. We got creative and just use, exploring even just hitting the metal on the risers and things like that. But when you do end up building your program up, I was fortunate. My district actually awarded, it was the one and only time I know of that they did this. Every school got a stipend to spend, and so some of the teachers were like, I have no idea what I'm going to purchase, and I'm like, I know I can get 100 things. And so that, but then applying for grants, which I know you talk a lot about that and how to do grant writing. And then also there's, so many people out there willing to donate to teachers and willing to help out. And then the PTA, if your PTO or PTA program is willing to help out with fundraising opportunities, a lot of times they will have extra money to spend and they don't even know you need something unless you ask. But yeah, so I just slowly built it up over time. And there's no, oh, I have to have all these instruments by next year. There's no race. There's no competition. It's just you building up your program slowly and like finding resources to teach. And a lot of times just in workshops and, or for Kodai trainings, you'll figure out, oh, I like that. Oh, I found out about this new book, and you'll slowly build up your resources over time. And so the main thing I can say is give yourself time to build your program up the way you want it to be built up. And like I said, there's no race and there's no time limit for when that needs to be done. And so by year 7 of being at that school, I did have rhythm instruments and xylophones and teaching resources and things, recorders. I just slowly built it up. It's, baby steps.
Yeah. And be patient with that growth too. It's again, lowering those expectations. So let's talk about programs. What were your programs and concerts like? Did you do 1 a year, 2 a year, 17? And then how did you plan those? Did you just tell me your experience? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So the first thing I learned was you need to talk with your principal because they'll have expectations. I did not, I was like, oh, I'm going to plan this and this. And then she's like, no, I want you to do it at this time. Okay. So sit down with your principal, first of all. And usually, the school year before, like the end of the school year, you maybe would sit down and talk to your principal about next school year. Let's get it on the calendar. What are you wanting from me? How many programs? Is there any themes you're wanting me to cover? And before you even start thinking about music. Like I said, I combined kinder and first, did one together. And then we actually got pre-K at my school. So they did it with kindergarten and first grade. They barely knew the songs, but they still just being up there, And then second grade and third grade did one together, and fourth and fifth grade did one together. And for me, I have always just been, this is my personality. And every teacher is different. I want to preface by saying this, but I wanted my students to be up there not just singing, but I always would have some instrument parts. And then these kids would come down and do some movement parts. And then these kids would come down and do speaking parts. And then, but not making it too crazy by any means. My programs would always be maybe 6 songs total, 5 or 6 total. And then let's say it was a patriotic theme. I would look around online about what programs were already out there. But I wouldn't even just do the full program from cover to cover. I would say, I like these songs and I want to add these songs to it. And then I want my kids to speak this poem while this child plays a drum. So that would be my advice is don't stress out so much about just finding a program. Figure out what theme you want, what grade level you want it to be, and then look at the resources you already have and then find a program. Maybe if you want to find a program, do that. And then combine the songs from the program with the stuff you already have. I wrote my own speaking parts. You don't need to make them complicated, just 2 lines, usually give them to the kids are going to absolutely show up, because I made that mistake of handing out speaking parts and I'd have to turn around to the crowd and say their lines. But yeah, and then when I say movement, like one time we did like a swing dancing program, which was really fun. And I had some kids, we would practice after school doing these swing dance moves together. And so just make it fun, but don't stress yourself out about it. Don't make it too complicated. I have known teachers that do 1 per grade level, and that's great. My mother-in-law is actually a music teacher, and she does musicals with her students. I think that's amazing. That was not my personality. So back with the teaching aspect, be comfortable with what you're comfortable with and don't take on too much. But your programs are your programs, and decide, like I said, with your principals. The teachers will probably have an input. But even keep back to the keeping it simple with the backdrops. The art teacher, I did not have an art teacher, but the librarian was an artist, and she would help just using bulletin board paper, she would create these awesome backdrops for me, and we would just hang them on the stage and left it like that. It was super simple. But yeah, keep it simple. If you're just starting out, simple backdrops, music you already have in your classroom, and then keep it simple.
So did you have them sing along to a piano, or did you use CDs, or what did you use?
So the programs I did buy, I used Music K8 a lot. And they come with a CD. They come with the ones with the kids singing on the tracks, and then just the instrumental tracks. But the music that they would sing, some of the songs that I had from like I said, my old textbooks, there would be CDs that would just be instrumental tracks as well. But there was this program, which I can't remember what it is now, but I know there's still programs out there today where I could just take the voices out and just use the instruments from the track by taking the voices out of the kids singing. But I'm also a pianist, by the way, as well. And so I would just record myself playing on top of that. And I do have music teachers ask me a lot too, well, I'm not a pianist, so how do I want to start an honors choir, but I don't play piano. How do I do that? I guarantee you do know someone who plays piano, and they love, pianists, we love to play. And so I would record a lot of my own music, and they would sometimes just even sing to the piano track, keeping it simple. Or if I felt comfortable with the older grades where I felt like I could walk to the piano without them all losing their minds, I would just stand up and play while they sang with me, standing at the piano. So yeah, there was a lot of different things that went on.
Yeah, I use, because I'm not a strong pianist, I can do like 4-part hymn,
Yeah.
So I use my ukulele a lot in the classroom.
Yeah.
If I, want to do a little background. Obviously, we sing a lot a cappella. I have used Music K8, which is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I use a lot of karaoke tracks.
Mm-hmm.
And background tracks and things like that.
Yeah.
And then I go way over the top. So you're all keep it simple. So
no. But like I said,
I will take the karaoke track and then I will put it into the right key, because often they're intended for like lower voices and adult voices, and so they have to be in the right key. So I will often transpose them using Audacity, or I have done that where I've taken the track and then taken out the voice, and then I will even clip songs and like rearrange them so that I'll do like a medley of 3 or 4 songs. But
that's awesome.
But it's taken me a few years to get to that point. Like those first couple years, it was just, we're going to sing along with whatever I can get my hands on,
Oh, definitely.
Whatever's easily downloadable, like that kind of thing. But yeah, and keeping it fun too. Totally.
Oh yeah.
That's gotta be the most challenging thing, because because especially if we're fresh out of college too, and then not knowing what is super fun for the kids. So you got to think on their level and also balance it with like, what's the audience going to enjoy? Anyway, we could do a whole episode just on,
definitely,
on program planning.
Yeah. I wanted to say too, coming out of student teaching, that was a challenge for me too, because my teacher I student taught under was amazing. She even won Teacher of the Year for her school district and everything. But I quickly learned her teaching style was not my teaching style. She had desk in her classroom, a lot of sit at the desk and open the textbook type of situation and sing. But she put on these grand, speaking of patriotic programs, and invite veterans from around the city. But I was like, I don't want the kids just sitting at desks. I don't want them just opening a textbook and turn to page 25 and then the next day turn to page 26. So if you're student teaching and you're about to start an elementary music program, even if it's not from scratch, but I would say learn. These teachers are amazing. The teacher you're teaching under is amazing and they're doing an amazing job. Like I said, make it your own when you get into your own classroom, and don't feel guilty about that. You don't have to do everything the same that your teacher, you were teaching under did. I just wanted to throw that in there.
No, that's perfect. Yeah. Just lower your expectations and make it your own. And I think that's one of the amazingly valuable things about stepping into a program that might be struggling or something. And hopefully our regular listeners will forgive me that we kind of harp on this subject of, building and growing programs. but that's really what so many of us have to do,
Yeah. Yeah.
and if we can't do it well, then we quit. And then
Yeah.
what's the point? So if we can help in those most challenging moments, whether it's an established program that you're trying to revamp or something that you're trying to build, it's really important. So that's why we harp on it. I'm just saying it's really challenging, but over time you do get to make it your own and build your own little dream school, your own little dream program. And that alone is worth sticking around through the first, 5, 6,
Oh,
7
yeah.
years.
Yeah.
I mean, eventually, and I think it's honestly the first 3. Once you're
Yes.
through the first 3, you kind of hit a groove, and
Yes.
then you start to see the light and how you can be doing it for so long, because
Yes.
you can. It's teaching music is an amazing, wonderful thing, and that's why we do it.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And then it's really fun because then your kindergartners eventually become 5th graders, and then they've known you forever, and then they already know what you expect. So you can just jump right in and teach music. So that becomes fun, seeing them grow up.
Sorry, just taking a note here. Super cool. Well, any final words, or how can the listeners learn more from you, Jessica?
To learn more from me, just go to thedomesticmusician.com, and then I have free resources on my website and a bunch of other, a podcast and a blog you can read, and a bunch of other stuff on there that you can find out more about me.
This episode really feels like a testament to the resourcefulness of music teachers, to our ability to solve problems and improve any situation by simply using our own intelligence and diligence. Big thanks to Jessica for being my guest for this episode, and I highly encourage you to check out the resources she has available on her website, thedomesticmusician.com. She has some great freebies on there for you. You'll find a link to her website on the show notes page for this episode. Just go to smartmusic.com/blog and search for episode 41. While you're there, we'd love to hear some of the resourceful ways you've grown your program too. Just add a comment on the show notes page. Again, smartmusic.com blog, search for episode 41. I can't wait to hear what you come up with. And to help you out, I'm giving you one of the most downloaded freebie items from my own blog and something I use almost every day in my own classroom. It's 55 small movements for keeping the beat. I use them by having each movement written on a craft stick and all these little craft sticks in a plastic cup. Then I choose the student to select a craft stick when I want a particular movement. You can use this for making repetition fun or even for choreographing an entire song. It's a blast. You can snag that download and all of the links for this episode again on the show notes page as well. While you're there, head on over to musicedsummit.org and check out this summer's International Music Education Summit. It's 3 days of live professional development clinics and workshops that you can attend virtually from home. And Jessica is going to be one of the presenters. Just enter the code podcast at checkout and you'll snag 20% off of your 2019 registration. You won't want to miss it. Friends, it would absolutely make my year if you would like, share, subscribe, and rate this podcast. I was recently at my state conference and had multiple attendees bring up the podcast to me, and that's not because of me. It's because of you helping to share it. And music educators all over the world are learning more because of it. Thank you again and again for all you do and for the incredible difference you make in the lives of your students. Until next time, keep teaching on.